My presentation is on SFDX plugins. I don't know how many people here use the command line like all day, every day. I know I'm one of them. As well as I don't know how many people use SFDX, but if you do, this is going to be your jam. I work at Postmates as a Salesforce engineer. We're a Salesforce customer. For about a year and a half, I was a one-man shop doing all the things, code admin and whatnot. And to help kind of automate my job, I started utilizing SFDX, not as much for the DevOps workflow, but more for the like data capabilities. Let's make that a little bigger. And so vanilla SFDX, you can kind of see an overview from just running SFDX --help. There's some neat stuff in there that's underneath force, SFDX force --help, and there's like all these things that Salesforce has built and packaged up for you that you can use to do, bulk data uploads, deletes, log your Apex classes, and all kinds of stuff, which is really, really helpful. But I needed a tool for me as an admin developer to make my job more efficient. And so I ended up writing a plugin that has this stuff in it. So stuff related to BigQuery, data, doing my development work, HelloSign API, opportunity, even user and record type. So I made a little script here. So how SFDX is laid out from a high level is they have topics and commands. Topics, think of them as like folders. So a folder for all of your different scripts that you might write. So a topic in this case is like BigQuery or opportunity or HelloSign. And your command is the actual thing that you're going to run. So to take a simple one, PM record type. If you run this --help after anything, it'll just like show you what's there. And so a really simple one that I made to save myself some time was I kept having to query record types and get IDs and names and stuff, so I just like tossed those out. Another kind of silly one is user get that accepts a bunch of different parameters. So like I can run user get with a part of a name or a role or a profile or if they're active or not or whatnot, and get their info kind of tossed out here to the command line. I added this skinny flag so that it only shows a few fields if I need it. If I pull that off, it gets me all kinds of stuff, even like last login date and email and whatnot. And I can also, what is that flag? Forget what the parameters to dump it out, output CSV. If I run output CSV, it's going to just take that result and just toss it to a CSV. How many times do you need to pull users out and then VLOOKUP on them to do stuff? I got tired of that, so I just dump it out here. And so I can just use that on the fly. So that was one. Some of the things that I use that save me, I think, the most time are in this data topic. These are commands to move data around or merge records or stuff like that. In August, we had a project where we're merging in the volume of thousands, tens of thousands of accounts together, and you can do through via the UI, and there's a few ways to kind of get around that, but we needed a way to go faster. And so I made this merge command that accepts what type of record do you want to merge. Just toss it comma-separated IDs that it's going to smush them together. Or just like, hey, if there's multiple 7, 11 accounts, name that exact same thing, just toss them all into one. So that was a neat one. Another one that was cool is set value. So it was very common that I would get an ask from the business of, hey, go and get all of the accounts. Let's run this while I'm talking. Go get me all the accounts with some state and update this field to this value. So what set value does is it accepts a query, which is like, what records do I want? And then it accepts a field, and then it accepts a value, and it just does that. And so I just ran that. I just pulled the first 5 accounts from prod and made their type cool company. So hopefully no one's working right now because I actually just did that update. So what I built as like a backup, because how many times would like something like that come and you mark the ticket completed and they're like, oh, just kidding, I wanted you to update these other things to this other value. So I pull the current state of the record out and I stick it in a backup CSV, which is right here. And so that way I can just run bulk upsert, what is it, account ID, and then I can just like put them back. So that saved me like too many times, which is kind of sad, but that was neat. And then, so that's done. Finally, before I wrap up, some of the commands that we have to create scratch orgs are pretty neat. So we have like dev org create, which will give you an org. You can like delete a bunch of scratch orgs. The source code for that's a little bit more interesting. So it's all like Typescript. If you haven't used Typescript before, it's very similar to JavaScript. It's very friendly. It's a little bit of a learning curve, like getting up to speed. But within the command itself, you define like a description. So if your colleagues like, what does this do? They can just run help and see. You define examples for them. I tend to use like working examples in here. So someone could run help and then run this example and it'll operate. And then you can define flags, either optional, or if you want something required, it's as easy as just like required true. And now it's required. Because it's TypeScript and you can run on like the cutting edge, you don't need to like worry about Salesforce supporting some certain version of JavaScript. You can just write whatever you need. You can build commands in this very like object-oriented manner. So here I'm just like newing up a dev hub with my current connection, and I'm calling dev hub create scratch org, and it's done. And then everything within this class, this monster dev hub class, like has all the magic, and you have your test there and all of that. So that's a little on plugins. Wanted to keep it high level with some examples that I have. If you have questions about how to get started, hit me up. I've done this for a little while at Postmates now, so I have some good gotchas and whatnot. But yeah, that's it.